Hello and welcome to SDN Tech Forum. So in my previous video, I introduced you to Linux and for Network Engineer series, and we went over the agenda. So this is the chapter 1. We are just getting started. That means we will prepare the test bed or the setup for this series. I'm going to install two different distros of Linux in two different machines. So you can follow along. You essentially do not need to have two machines. You can probably use Oracle VirtualBox and spin up two VMs. In my case, I am doing it one on a VM and another one is a bare metal install. So we have chosen two distros. One is Rocky Linux, another is Ubuntu install, so that we will get to know about the flavor of Linux plus Ubuntu, because these are the two most popular versions or distros of Linux, right? So first thing, I'm going to show you how to install Linux as a VM. And then in the second video, I'm going to walk you through Ubuntu installs. Within Ubuntu install, we have run through some challenges. It's basically every time I have to do a bare metal install, I'm trying to use a USB, bootable USB to install that operating system. Especially in Ubuntu, I realized that Balena Etcher is not suitable. So you may have to use something like a Rufus, and the description link for that free software is available in description. So when you try to do a Ubuntu install, I would recommend you go and download Rufus and use that Rufus to prepare a live bootable USB, so that your installation will not run into any kind of issues. Let's go ahead with our first install, and this is Rocky Linux VM. I am using vSphere to uh, initiate a VM, but you can use Oracle VirtualBox or any other virtualization solution you have. So you can see this is the VM and hard disk, CPU parameter, and I have attached the OS media as a CD DVD. Now let me go ahead and power it up. So initially it was a VM configuration. Now, as you can see, it is using that ISO media, and I will say test this media and install Rocky Linux. This will actually test the hardware for compatibility and other things. I think this is a best practice. It will slow you down a bit during install, but it's better than rushing and then discover that you have some hardwares or some drivers missing, right? So this is starting the installer, Rocky Linux 8. I think the newer versions are available. So this is like open source distro. I didn't choose Red Hat for our series, because I think Rocky Linux is a little bit flexible and open source. Quite straightforward installation. Choose your language, English or wherever you are. Then you have a couple of options here, right? So you can use server, you can use workstation, and server will give you everything except the graphical easy to manage server with a graphical interface. I'm sorry, server with GUI, right? So depend on what you choose, you'll get the different kind of packages. I like workstation install because it gives me pretty much everything to use. Local standard disk, I allocated 20 GB because this is a VM, and I think that's a good one. So that's my installation destination, that hard drive or virtual hard disk. Once you satisfy that condition, then it is asking you to set the root password. So this is the password for root user. Okay, set the password. It's complaining about short, but it's okay. It's a lab environment. Uh, Click on done a couple of times or two times, and it will be accepted. And now what you can do, you can actually go ahead and create a user here, right? So we have a root user by default, but you can actually go ahead and create a user. And it's a good practice that you make your first user administrator. So it will have all the sudo privileges. It will be added to sudo or list by default. Otherwise, If you don't check that make this user administrator button, then when you can log in with that username, you actually have to add the sudo that user to the sudo list to run task, typical task like upgrade the distro or download some packages. So it's always good that if you know that this is the user you are going to log in, make it at the administrator at GUI, which is much simpler. All right. Now we are looking at some VM options. VMware tool, it is already installed. It may not be applicable to your environment because you choose to install it in a different way. So this is related to all VMware thing. And if you want to find out more about VMware, I have a video series on my channel. You can search with VMware. Okay. We have one VNIC allocated. So this machine will have one Ethernet interface. You can also add different network adapter. You can add USB devices and storage. So let's go ahead. Looks like I want to have one more network adapter. If that is the case, you can actually go ahead and add it. Okay, while we were looking at VMware option, you can see installation is complete and it's simply asking you to reboot the system. And at that point of time, you are ready with your VM. Okay, so once, uh, okay, it tell you the distro Rocky Linux 4.18. That's the distribution. And Linux boots are really fast. So you'll see immediately, okay, licensing, this is a open source, so you just have to accept the end user license. And what you can do, you can simply click on it and accept. So the installation is not finished yet because we have this pending task. And you can see this is pretty standard, simple EULA. Accept this, and now you can say finish configuration. At that point, your installation is complete and your machine is ready uh, for users, right? So this is the user I created initially, and now you can see I use the password. I'm logged in to Rocky Linux, and this is the first time login screen. So your language is shown here. This is like a splash screen which tell you things about during the first time login, and now you are ready to go start using Rocky Linux. Done. Quite simple, right? Let's check a few things before we move on to the next install. So you can see we have the no wireless here. We just have a wired interface. And the networking side you can check on the right side. On the left side, you can go and open a terminal. Let's check a few things about the distro. So this is uname-a will give you release information. This is 14.18 Linux distribution, SDN Tech ID. So I want to see who I am and what is my ID look like. Okay, so this is the user we created, and that's why I get a UID of 1000. So 1000 and above are user-defined user IDs, and below that, this is all reserved for machines, right? So my ID is SDN Tech, and by default, I have the same group, which is SDN Tech. You can see I have one NIC. There are loopbacks and VirtualBox NICs, but they are there just because I have virtualization or virtual bridges available. But let's focus on the physical NIC. Obviously, it's a virtual NIC mapped to a physical. So, but that's the NIC I'm going to use to receive an IP address and talk to outside world, right? And in that case, in this case, it is tagged as ENS 192. The naming convention may be different from one distro to another distro, and so you can do IP link show or if config to see which NIC card you have. Right, as you can see now, I have enabled my wired NIC, I can ping the gateway, and hopefully very quickly I will receive an IP address from DHCP. These are the processes running, how my virtual VM is doing. You can use the top command to see the utilization PS for all the processes running, etc. Okay, this is end of installation. Now we are going to run some basic checks. Who am I? I'm logged in as SDN Tech, and you have seen what is my user ID look like. Let's see if I can do a sudo as SDN Tech, right? Because we marked it as administrator. We trust this unusual. Okay, as you can see, it is asking me a password, and once I provided the password of SDN Tech, I can go ahead and fetch the upgraded upgrade packages. That means I do have sudo privileges, so which is good. So all this yum, and we'll talk about yum in later videos. So I have all the privileges. All right, let's go and check Ubuntu install now. Now we are ready for our second install, as you can see. And pardon me, this is a bit shaky because I was actually capturing this from my mobile screen. And this is the Ubuntu install. I have a USB media plugged in to the bare metal. And upon boot, you press F10 or F6 and select your USB as a boot. Once you select USB as a boot, you will presented with this option. Here we have try Ubuntu or install Ubuntu. We want to install Ubuntu, but you can also try it. So let's go ahead and install. Similar screen like Rocky Linux. Choose your keyboard layout, language, and if you want to connect to wireless at this time. For this, I don't have any wired connection at a moment, so I will go ahead and connect to wireless. Then it is asking you what app you want to install. So I'm just going with normal installation, which will give me everything I need to work it as a desktop, right? So select the options and then say install now. Okay, erase disk and install Ubuntu. As you can see, install now is grayed out. So I have to select the disk which I want to install, on which I want to install Ubuntu, because it is telling me that all the data will be erased. So you need to confirm that. And I'm fine with that because I know that I'm installing another operating system. Now select your time zone. Finally, it is asking you to put your username and a password, and that will be used for login, right? So you have an option to pair it with Active Directory, but this is like a workstation environment. So we will say, what is my username? I have picked a username SDN Tech as a channel name, and then the choose password, some standard password. There are options. You can log in automatically or require a password to log in. I like required my password to log in. So let's choose that radio button. So my name is SDN Tech, and you can see I picked a username called SDN2. Now continue. This will run for 5 to 7 minutes because we have chosen normal install, and as you can see, it is installing a lot of software which you use day to day, right? If it is a workstation, you need a browser, you need a mail client, you need a media player, photo editing, and all those things. So whatever it feels that fit as a workstation resource, it is going to pull that. And also you can see LibreOffice calculation. So it's just like Microsoft 360, right? Open source thing you are getting as a document thing. Installation is complete. I have actually speeded up of the video a little bit. That's why you see installation complete so quickly, and say restart now. Just like our Ubuntu Linux install. You have to restart upon completion, and it is asking you to remove the installation media. So I have to unplug that USB media, and it will go ahead and boot from the disk where the software was copied. And as you can see, my username is SDN Tech. I applied the password and I am logged in here. So that's complete our install. Thank you.